Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. Paul Amadeus Dienach was a Swiss language teacher who in the early 20th century faced a severe health crisis and entered a coma that lasted nearly 1 year. And upon awakening, he claimed to have experienced something unusual. His consciousness had been projected into the future, specifically to the year 3900, where he inhabited the body of a man of that time. And he said he learned about future society, its technologies, political changes, and spiritual transformations. And because he believed no one would believe him, he wrote everything in a personal diary with no intention of revealing it. And when he moved to Greece, he gave his writings to one of his most dedicated students, Georgios Papachatzis, to help him learn German. And Papachatzis only later understood the nature of the content and, convinced that the manuscript had historical or philosophical value, decided to preserve and publish it, giving rise to the Chronicles of the Future, which turned Dienach's account into one of the most discussed stories about possible consciousness travel through time. The story of Travis Walton began during a work shift in the forests of Arizona, when he and his team of loggers saw a luminous object hovering among the trees. And fascinated, Travis approached and was struck by a blue beam of light that launched him into the air in front of his co-workers, who fled in fear but later returned and could not find him. And for 5 days, Travis remained missing while his team was investigated and submitted to polygraph tests that confirmed the consistency of their account. And when he returned, he reported waking in a metallic room where large-eyed beings observed him, followed by encounters with tall humanoid entities who guided him through curved corridors and showed him an environment filled with luminous panels. And he also described the detailed structure of the craft with symmetrical design and intense lower lights, which he later reproduced in drawings. And decades later, Travis continues telling his experience in lectures, making the case one of the most famous and debated abduction reports in world ufology. In 1995, Mike Markham attracted attention when he appeared on the program Coast to Coast AM, claiming he had built a small device based on a Jacob's ladder that made objects disappear for brief moments as if they were jumping through time, and seeking to expand the experiment. Markham stole power transformers, causing a blackout in King City, Missouri, and was arrested. And after serving his sentence, he returned to the program in 1996, saying he was working on a second version of the time machine using legal components. And he reported having sent about 200 objects and small animals through the device and said he planned to test the journey on himself. And he also said that during one experiment, he saw what he described as a metallic card from the future, which motivated him even more. And in 1997, he announced that the device would be completed in 30 days, and shortly after he disappeared without leaving any trace, generating theories ranging from escape to the possibility that he actually traveled through time. The Benedictine priest Pellegrino Ernetti, an Italian musician and exorcist, claimed in the 1950s to have participated in the creation of an extraordinary device, the Chronovisor, a machine capable of capturing images and sounds from the past, and according to him, the project involved renowned scientists including the physicist Enrico Fermi and Wernher von Braun, who later became a central figure in the United States space program. And the device, according to Ernetti, used electromagnetic waves that would remain recorded in the environment, allowing the reconstruction of historical scenes and sketches attributed to the Monk show, antennas, receivers, and analysis modules, suggesting a complex device. And although no prototype was ever shown to the public, Ernetti insisted for decades that the Vatican knew of the Chronovisor and kept it hidden because it was considered dangerous technology. One of Ernetti's most controversial claims emerged when he presented an alleged photograph obtained by the Chronovisor, claiming it depicted Jesus at the moment of the crucifixion, and the image quickly generated debate, but scholars discovered it was extremely similar to a religious painting created decades earlier, and Ernetti maintained his version until the end of his life, insisting that he had shown only one of many scenes captured by the device. And the French writer François Brun, a close friend of the monk, investigated the matter and became convinced of the existence of the Chronovisor, publishing accounts and interviews that increased the case's popularity. And Brune died in 2019, still believing in the machine. Victor Goddard was an experienced officer of the Royal Air Force known for his navigation skill and aerial inspection missions, and during one such mission, he was sent to fly over the aerodrome of Drem, which was deactivated at the time, and during the flight he faced bad weather and became disoriented, and upon returning to the aerodrome area, he witnessed something inexplicable. Drem appeared fully active with yellow aircraft on the ground and mechanics working, and one of the aircraft was a monoplane he did not recognize. And Goddard also noticed that the mechanics wore blue overalls, even though the Royal Air Force used only beige overalls at that time, and years later, Drem was officially reactivated and training aircraft began being painted yellow, and mechanics adopted blue overalls, changes identical to what he had seen before they existed, and the case became one of the most famous accounts associated with possible involuntary time slips. Carl Meredith Allen, also known as Carlos Allende, was an American merchant seaman who became notable for sending letters to researcher Morris Jessup in the 1950s in which he claimed to have witnessed a secret United States Navy experiment in 1943 in which the ship USS Eldridge was surrounded by a strong electromagnetic field intended to make it invisible to radar. But according to him, the effect was much stronger, and the ship disappeared completely and reappeared in another location as if teleported. And he also reported that some crew members suffered terrible consequences, including nausea, mental confusion, and even claims of men becoming fused into the hull. And although the government denies the experiment ever happened, Allen's stories fueled decades of theories about manipulation of space-time and top-secret military projects. Andrew Carlson appeared in the early 2000s, claiming he came from the year 2256 after turning $800 into more than $350 million in only 2 weeks through high-risk trades that seemed impossible to experienced investors, and the Securities and Exchange Commission arrested him on suspicion of insider trading. And during interrogation, Carlson stated that he used knowledge from the future for every investment decision, and he even offered predictions to prove his origin. And after being released on bail paid by an unidentified person, he disappeared without leaving any trace, and no reliable record ever confirmed his identity or his story. And many claim the case likely arose as a legend created and spread by sensationalist newspapers. Antonio Vas Boas, a young farmer from Minas Gerais, became one of the earliest protagonists of a modern extraterrestrial abduction account, when in 1957 he claimed to have been taken aboard a craft while working at night in the fields, and according to him, small beings wearing tight clothing and helmets performed medical examinations and collected samples from his body. And the episode became even more intriguing when Vas Boas described being taken to a compartment where he encountered a humanoid female with unusual features with whom he said he was forced to have intimate contact. And upon returning, he reported weakness, pain, and skin irritation and sought medical attention. And his testimony attracted researchers who documented details of his health and behavior. And Vas Boas maintained his story until his death in 1991. And his older brother, Jose Vas Boas, also reaffirmed that Antonio never changed his account, helping the case become one of the most famous in Brazilian ufology. In October 1973, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker were fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi when they saw a bright light descend to the riverbank, and a silver egg-shaped craft opened a luminous doorway, and 3 tall metallic beings emerged, with fixed eyes, rigid arms, claw-shaped hands, slits instead of mouths and noses, and antenna-like structures on their heads. And according to Hickson, the beings lifted him effortlessly and examined him with a device resembling a mechanical eye, while Parker, overwhelmed by fear, felt only touches and pressure around his body. And after a few minutes, they were returned to the location and went to the police. And secret recordings showed that they described the event with the same fear and detail, and decades later, Both men continued to uphold the story, and Parker still visited the site, saying he never forgot the night when he believed he was taken by unknown beings. In 2013, the Fars Agency reported that the Iranian citizen Ali Razegi, 27 years old, had created a device capable of predicting the future with high accuracy. But the news was withdrawn days later, and authorities denied the project, and Razegi stated that the machine could anticipate wars, crises, and epidemics, generating significant controversy in the country. In 1997, a newspaper advertisement drew attention by seeking someone to travel through time, stating that the mission had no guarantee of safety, and the clipping went viral and inspired the film Safety Not Guaranteed. In 1851, reports published in the United Kingdom drew attention to the case of a man found in a confused state near the German village of Frankfurt on the Oder. And when questioned by authorities, he said his name was Vorin and claimed he did not know where in the world he was. And he said he had shipwrecked while searching for his brother and had come from a country called Laxaria, located in a vast continental region known as Sakria, none of which existed on any map. And Vorin did not recognize known continents and described Earth as divided into 5 major regions called Sakria, Aflar, Aslar, Auslar, and Uplar. And he claimed to speak fluently the Laxarian language and a second language called Abrumian, both unknown, and he said he followed Christianity but belonged to a branch called Ispatian, also non-existent, and intrigued authorities sent him to Berlin for further interrogation, but reports state that he escaped on the way and disappeared without leaving any trace. Barney and Betty Hill were an American couple who in 1961 reported experiencing one of the most well-known extraterrestrial abductions in history. And during a nighttime trip through New Hampshire, they said they were followed by a light that approached until it revealed a silent craft hovering over the road, and according to them, humanoid beings took them aboard and performed detailed medical examinations, and the case gained enormous attention when Betty, under hypnosis, described a star map she said she had seen inside the craft, formed by several points connected by roots. And years later, an analysis suggested that the drawing corresponded to the Zeta Reticuli system about 40 light-years from Earth, and the coincidence intrigued researchers and remains without a definitive explanation. And even decades later, Barney and Betty maintained their account, making the episode one of the most influential abduction cases in modern ufology. The London hammer was found in Texas in the 1930s, encased inside rock estimated to be hundreds of millions of years old, and the modern appearance of the tool generated theories about time travel and out-of-place artifacts, as the handle and metallic head resemble a common hammer, and for some people it would be evidence of advanced technology in the distant past. But scientists explain that the rock around it may have formed recently through natural processes, making the enigma less extraordinary, though still heavily debated. J. Bernard Hutton, a writer, and Joachim Brandt, a photographer, worked for a German newspaper when they were sent to the Hamburg shipyard in 1932 for a report. And while there, they saw something frightening. Bombs began to fall, explosions shook the port, and aircraft flew overhead in a sudden air raid, and believing they were in the middle of a real bombing, they ran for safety, but managed to take several photographs before fleeing. And when they showed the images, no one believed them, because the developed photos showed only the shipyard operating normally, with no signs of an attack, and the episode was treated as confusion or delusion. And 11 years later, while living in London, Hutton opened the newspaper and saw the headline about Operation Gomorrah, the devastating Allied bombing that destroyed Hamburg in 1943, and the images published were shockingly similar to what he had claimed to have seen in 1932. The Man from Taured case is one of the most enigmatic stories linked to possible time travelers or individuals from alternate realities. And in 1954, a man arrived at Haneda Airport in Tokyo presenting a flawless passport from a country called Taured that Japanese authorities could not find on any map. And he claimed Taured was located between France and Spain, exactly where Andorra is. but he insisted he had never heard of that name, and his passport contained valid stamps from several countries, and he also had a driver's license and checkbook from non-existent banks. And he stated he was in Japan for a business meeting and had been traveling for 5 years, and confused officials placed him under surveillance in a hotel, and the next morning the man and all his documents had vanished without leaving any trace. Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were British educators who met while working at St. Hugh's College in Oxford, and in 1901, during a visit to the Palace of Versailles, they reported experiencing an extraordinary episode when the surroundings became strange and silent, as if the sound had been muffled, and they soon began seeing people wearing 18th century clothing, performing everyday tasks as if unaware of the visitors. And both women claimed to have seen even a woman resembling Marie Antoinette sitting near a lawn. And after returning to England, they researched historical details and became convinced they had witnessed a moment from the past, and they published the book An Adventure, arguing that they might have crossed some kind of temporal distortion. Stefan Michalak, a Polish immigrant who worked as a mechanic and amateur geologist, claimed to have encountered an unidentified flying object in 1967 near Falcon Lake in Canada. And during his exploration of the area, he saw 2 lights descending into the forest and approached thinking they were ordinary aircraft. And as he got closer, he saw a large metallic disc, bright and silent, and to protect his eyes from the intense light, he put on his welding goggles, which he carried for field work. And through them, he said, he observed panels and openings in the structure, and at one moment the object rotated, and a lateral grid opened, releasing a jet of extremely hot air or gas that struck him in the chest and abdomen, and shortly after the craft lifted off and disappeared, leaving Michalak disoriented and feeling intense heat on his skin. After the encounter, Michalak developed grid-shaped burns on his chest and abdomen, matching the pattern he said he saw on the craft. And he also reported nausea, headaches, disorientation, and weight loss in the following weeks. And the clothes he wore that day showed holes and signs of intense heat. And metallic fragments were found at the incident site, some allegedly containing unusual levels of radiation. And the Canadian government and aviation authorities investigated the case, but reached no conclusive explanation, and to this day, the Falcon Lake incident is considered one of the best documented and unexplained UFO encounters in Canada. In 2019, attention was drawn to an 1898 photograph taken in the Yukon Territory in Canada, showing 3 children working in a mining area, and one of them displayed facial traits remarkably similar to those of activist Greta Thunberg, which generated curious theories, although the most accepted explanation is simply the natural recurrence of physical characteristics throughout time. Guido Valentich holds the photograph of his son Frederick, who mysteriously disappeared on October 24, 1978, during a flight from Melbourne to King Island in a Cessna 182L. And the 20-year-old pilot reported seeing green lights and a metallic object following him before communication was cut, and no wreckage was ever found, leading his father to believe he was abducted by extraterrestrials, making it one of the most intriguing aerial disappearances in Australia. During the flight, Frederick Valentich reported by radio that a bright, elongated object accompanied him and emitted a metallic noise, and after that, his aircraft vanished without leaving any trace, and searches found only small patches of oil on the sea. And decades later, the case still inspires theories about UFOs, mechanical failure, or spatial disorientation, and the young pilot became the symbol of one of Oceania's most persistent aviation mysteries. During a 2008 excavation, archaeologists were investigating a tomb that had been sealed for more than 400 years in Shanxi Province, China, when they found an unexpected object. A small gold ring that functioned as a miniature watch marked with the word Swiss, and because the tomb dated to the Ming Dynasty, the discovery seemed out of place and generated intense debate, and some suggested that the tomb had been violated at some point, although no signs of recent entry were found, while others considered the object a possible out-of-place artifact, keeping alive the mystery of how a modern watch appeared in such an ancient location. Photographs from different eras sometimes reveal striking similarities. And one example involves the Turkish revolutionary leader Mahir Kayhan, born in 1946 and killed in 1972 during a military operation, and the presenter Jimmy Fallon. On the night of September 1, 1969, the Warner family was driving through Sheffield, Massachusetts, when an intense light crossed the sky and stopped above the car, and everyone felt a strange pressure and lost their sense of time. And on the same night, the young Melanie Kirchdorfer reported having been taken by an unknown force while she was at the lake with friends, and decades later, the survivors still describe the case with precision, insisting it was not a collective illusion. Thomas Reed and his mother also witnessed the phenomenon when a bright light forced their car to stop, and both claimed they were taken to an unknown place before awakening confused. And the event known as the Berkshire UFO case was officially recognized by authorities in 2015. And to this day, Reed, Melanie, and the Warners maintain the same account that something inexplicable crossed the skies and forever changed the lives of those who witnessed it. In the frozen Arctic in 1971, military cameras captured something no one could explain: flying objects with geometric shapes crossing the white horizon, and the photographs displayed sharp details of metallic structures that defied all subsequent analyses, and no official explanation was released, and the images continue to raise doubts about whether they were secret experiments, impossible reflections, or something that does not belong to this world. This photo shocked several authorities of the time by showing an alleged time traveler wearing contemporary clothing among a crowd of people dressed in hats and suits from the 1940s, and recorded in 1941 at the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia. His appearance raises suspicion of a possible journey through time. This 1930s photo shows the movement in Union Square in New York, and among pedestrians and vendors, a man raises his hand to his ear holding a small object, a gesture resembling the use of a cellular telephone, although the image does not clearly reveal what he was carrying. John Titor appeared in online forums in the early 2000s claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036, and he said he had been sent to retrieve a 1975 IBM 5100 computer capable of executing old code needed to correct failures in future systems. And Titor described the C204 machine, which he said used micro wormholes and gravitational fields to allow travel between different timelines, and his posts included photographs, technical diagrams, and physics explanations, as well as accounts of military training, and a society that had become more rural and fragmented after global conflicts, and he predicted a civil war in the United States in 2005, followed by a world war in 2015, and although none of this occurred, some claimed these events may have been prevented due to his presence in the past, and after months of activity, Titor disappeared without leaving a trace, and to this day, his case remains one of the most famous legends about time travel. Here we see a busy port filled with workers and a boat loaded with bananas, and near the edge, a man in a light shirt appears to display a Mohawk-style haircut, something uncommon for the early 1900s. This 1943 photo taken in Cornwall shows people on the beach, and in the center, a man in a dark suit appears holding a small object to his face in a gesture that resembles a cellular telephone, and the record remains curious because no one knows exactly what he was holding. On a street in central Reykjavik in 1943, a man holds an object to his face while soldiers pass by, and the gesture resembles the use of a cellular phone and generated curious theories, although analyses indicate he was carrying a common portable radio. The photo, taken more than 100 years ago, shows several people sitting on a hillside, and on the left side, a young man draws attention for wearing clothing that seems far too modern for the time, and some people around him look in his direction, leaving open the question of who he was and why he dressed that way. The hieroglyphs found in the Temple of Seti I in Abydos drew attention for resembling modern machines, and carved into ancient limestone walls, they appear to form images that resemble a helicopter, a submarine, and even something like aircraft, and the similarity generated speculation because these symbols appear isolated among traditional figures of ancient Egypt. And researchers explain that the effect may have been created by the superimposition of older and newer carvings during renovations of the temple. In 1962, during the World Cup final in Chile, a crowd surrounded the Brazilian players at the moment the trophy was raised, and in the center of the image, a curious detail stands out. A man holds a rectangular object pointed toward the field resembling a modern telephone, and the record generated numerous theories over time. But analysis of the photo reveals that it was a box camera common at the time, and the angle and compact format explain the illusion that made the photograph famous. Over the years, old photographs have emerged that allegedly show Civil War soldiers beside the body of an animal resembling a pterodactyl. And the images, often attributed to the late 19th century, circulated as possible evidence that prehistoric creatures survived beyond the period known to science, and many specialists suggest these images are staged or studio works made decades later. But there are also experts who claim to find no clear signs of manipulation in certain records. And another hypothesis is that the soldiers may have encountered a rare and unknown bird later mistaken for a dinosaur. And although no proof exists to support the idea of a real pterodactyl, the collection of these photos has fueled theories about anomalous encounters in the past. During an expedition in the Baltic Sea in 2011, Swedish divers detected something unusual at great depth. A huge circular structure resting on the ocean floor, and as they approached, their equipment began to fail and only resumed functioning when they moved away. And the object, with contours similar to a disc, remains unidentified, and no analysis has determined its origin. And without new funding, the mystery remains trapped beneath the icy waters of the Baltic. The Antikythera Mechanism was recovered from a shipwreck dating to around 87 BC between the Peloponnese and Crete, and it surprised researchers by revealing a system of fine gears that functioned as an ancient analog computer, and it predicted eclipses, celestial positions, planetary cycles, and lunar phases with remarkable precision. And centuries later, three-dimensional analyses revealed internal details of this advanced technology far beyond what was believed to exist in the ancient world and considered unique. The mechanism disappeared from history with the end of the Roman era, leaving an enigma about the true scientific reach of ancient civilizations. Dated to the early 15th century, the Voynich manuscript is one of the greatest enigmas in history. Handwritten in an unknown language and containing more than 200 pages of drawings of plants that do not exist, celestial maps, enigmatic human figures, and impossible biological diagrams, and discovered in 1912 by the bookseller Wilfred Voynich. The book has challenged scientists, cryptographers, and historians for more than 100 years. The pages display fluid handwriting in a language that belongs to no known linguistic group, and analyses confirm that the text follows real linguistic patterns, yet remains undeciphered. And some scholars believe it is a lost language, while others claim it is an unbreakable cipher or even a medieval fraud. And no theory has been proven, and the author remains a complete mystery. The enigmatic Bermuda Triangle, delimited by the Bermuda Islands, Florida, and Puerto Rico, is one of the most bizarre and mysterious locations on the planet. And in 1918, a British ship known as HMS Southampton disappeared without leaving any trace. And in December 1945, 5 United States Navy torpedo aircraft also vanished in that area, about 300 kilometers from the Bahamas. And in total, it is estimated that more than 900 lives have been lost in that treacherous region, and some scientists suggest that magnetic variations could interfere with the compasses of ships, causing them to navigate aimlessly or even disappear. In Saudi Arabia, a massive boulder about 4,000 years old was found split perfectly in half by a surface as straight as if cut by a laser, and supported only by 2 minimal rocky pedestals. The stone defies explanation, because how could such a precise and perfectly straight cut exist in such an ancient rock? The scene shows 3 women walking through the center of a busy city, recorded in a 1938 film. And among the laughter and relaxed steps, one specific gesture drew attention when the footage was recovered decades later. The woman in the center raises her hand to her face while holding a small object, creating the impression that she was speaking into something compact and portable like a telephone that would only exist many years later. Yet the framing does not allow the identification of what she was truly carrying. During the filming of Charlie Chaplin's silent feature, The Circus, a brief scene drew public attention decades later when a woman dressed in dark clothing walked slowly while keeping her hand against her face, holding a small, unidentified object, and the gesture resembles the use of a telephone during a call, even though such devices did not exist in the 1920s, and the original footage was restored and analyzed many times, but no definitive conclusion was reached, and some strongly believe the woman was holding a common hearing aid of the era. In 1964, Jim Templeton photographed his daughter in a field in England, and when the photo was developed, a mysterious figure appeared in the background resembling an astronaut. And the strangest part is that no one was present at the location at that moment. A painting by Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller, created in 1860, appears to show a man focused on an object that resembles a modern device, and the resemblance generated debate on the internet, although scholars point out that it was simply a book.